Hello there, my name is Marina Rodriguez and today I'm going to teach you how to analyze complex sentences with 7 examples from the book The Watsons by the British writer Jane Austen. But first of all, what are complex sentences? Complex sentences are the ones that have one independent clause and at least one dependent, also called subordinate clause, joined by a subordinator. The dependent clause cannot stand by itself because it would look like a sentence fragment. There are 3 types of subordinators: subordinating conjunctions, relative adverbs, and relative pronouns. And there are 3 types of subordinate clauses: noun clauses, which behave like a noun, relative clauses, which act as an adjective, and adverb clauses, which pair as an adverb. In this video, I will explain examples of complex sentences focusing on the first 2 types of clauses. Now that we already know what a complex sentence is, we can start analyzing the noun clauses. This type of clauses functions as a noun. I do not wonder that you should not wish to go with her into that country, Miss Emma. To start analyzing the sentence, we have to identify the subject and the predicate, and then find the main verb. In this case, the main conjugated verb is do not wonder, which is composed of the auxiliary verb do not and the transitive verb of thinking, wonder. Our dependent clause starts with the subordinating conjunction that. As a consequence of that, our sentence is a that clause, and it is acting as a direct object. The subordinate clause goes after a transitive verb of thinking, that is wonder, and its use is a statement. Now let's go with the second sentence. I should not be surprised if you were to be thought one of the prettiest girls in the room. There is a great deal in novelty. As we have said before, the first thing to do is to identify the subject and the predicate, and then find the main verb in the sentence. In this case, the main conjugated verb is should not be, which is a linking verb. The subordinate clause starts with if, a subordinating conjunction. So this sentence is an if-whether clause. After a linking verb, it comes a subject complement, so that is the function of the sentence. Finally, in this opportunity, the sentence use is statement. Now let's go with the last noun clause sentence. You talked so stoutly beforehand that I was sadly afraid your brag would be punished. As we said previously, we have to identify the subject and the predicate, and then find the main verb, which is talked. It is a transitive verb of speaking. The subordinate clause starts with that, so this is a that clause. In this sentence, the subordinate clause acts as a direct object and works as a reported speech. Now we can start analyzing the relative clauses. The first sentence says, the Edwards were people of fortune, who lived in the town and kept their coach. The first thing to do is to identify the subject and the predicate. Then we have to identify the main conjugated verb. In this case, it's were. In the predicate, we find the subordinate clause that starts with the relative pronoun who. In this sentence, is acting as the subject of the subordinate clause. This relative clause is a non-defining one, and you might be asking, why? And that is because it gives more information about the antecedent. In this case, the antecedent is the Edwards. The second one says, I shall not show myself here again when I have had the honor of attending Lady Osborne to her carriage. You have to identify the subject and the predicate again and find the main verb that in this case is shall. In the predicate, we see the subordinate clause that starts with the relative adverb when. In this case, it is acting as the adverb of the subordinate clause. This clause is a defining relative clause because it gives just the essential information about the antecedent, that in this case is again. The third one says, his daughter felt the advantage of this gratified state of mind in the course of the remarks and retrospections which now ensued over the welcome soup. You must identify the subject and the predicate of the sentence and find the main verb. In this opportunity is felt. In the predicate, the subordinate clause starts with the relative pronoun which, that is acting as the subject of the subordinate clause. This is a defining relative clause because, like the previous one, it gives essential information about the antecedent, which is the advantage. And remember that the relative defining clauses do not go between commas. The last sentence says, she was to find her home with Robert and Jane, who openly discussed her prospects of making a good match. In this example, you must identify the subject and the predicate, and find the main verb, which is the word was. In this sentence, we find the subordinate clause that starts with the relative pronoun who, and it is acting as the subject of the subordinate clause. This is a non-defining relative clause because it gives more information about the antecedent, and in this case the antecedent of the clause is Jane. And that's how we analyze complex sentences. I hope that you liked the video and you can learn about this. Bye bye! See you in the next video.